Hi, I'm Candace, and you're watching Inside of New England's Therapeutic Talk. Today, I am going to show you guys a research study that I did when I was in the graduate program in psychology at CCSU. Uh, I did a lot of research on multicultural topics while I was in the program, and this one is my favorite one. So I'm going to share this one today. I think it's very relevant to things that are happening today. So I hope you enjoy it. So I called it, What is in a Name? This study was done to look at names and stereotypes. So my little theory when I started coming up with the topic was that, people have names and their name could be associated with their looks, with their personality, with how much money they might have, or just like that people would automatically kind of take a name or hear a name or see a name and just not even thinking about it, like not even consciously like thinking, hey, about it, just automatically picturing that individual and what they look like and who they were, what nationality they were, what race they were, everything just based on their name. So I went to my professor and I said, I think this is what I want to do it on. And she said, that's really interesting. And I think it's really interesting too. So what is in a name? When we hear a name, we like, for instance, Sarah. We hear Sarah. What do we think Sarah might look like? What do we think Sarah might do for a living? Do we think she's a safe person to be around? So all of those things come into our minds automatically. So I looked at a lot of different research. The Clark study that was done in 1930s, the Clarks were doctors who looked at dolls, like baby dolls, and there's a black doll, there's a white doll, and children will look at these dolls and they will associate the dolls with being good or bad dolls. Just so usually, more often, the bad doll is associated with the black baby doll. So the kids would say, yeah, that's a bad doll, even if it was them. So this is the heartbreaking part of this study, is that even the black children would say that was a bad doll. And then it's like, well, who does that doll, which one looks like you? And it's kind of heartbreaking that those children would think that the bad doll looked like them. So it's just something to think about. This study has been replicated over and over again throughout the years, and the results have been the same throughout the years up into current times, as far as I know. So it is definitely something that to be aware of with children. And then I looked at other stereotypes with situations with names. So names and stereotypes in children. Stereotypes with names, this was done in the 70s. They did notice that names were associated with children, stereotyping with names. We also saw that with of Jewish and non-Jewish people, and they had noticed that there were stereotypes with these photos. So they would associate with negative stereotypes towards Jewish people, or not being Jewish with being more of a positive situation, depending on which picture the participants had. So I also saw some online studies that were done, and they had German names and Turkish names. And I think what they were doing in this study, if I remember correctly, is that they had they were buying things. So it depended on the price. It was like people would pay more for, I believe, the German name over the Turkish name for some reason. I guess there's this thing going on with that where, for whatever reason, it was like the item would be associated with that name as being something that they would pay more money for. So that was what, so people were identifying a name with seeing that a product would be more worth more money, depending on what the name was. So it's kind of interesting. And then I also saw that racial stereotypes actually can hurt academic performances. So depending on, so that's another thing to notice. So my hypothesis is that names are associated with stereotypes, which may be leading to discrimination, particularly with employment, education, economic and social status, the level of trust that people have towards the person, their appearance, and actually recognizing what gender they are based on their name. So to do this study, I had to do a pilot study first. So what I did was I had these photographs. I think there were more photographs than this, but these are a couple of the photographs that I used. I think you can see my little arrow. This is the Muslim woman. This is my Black woman. This is one of the white men, I think. This is the another Muslim woman. This was a Black male, and this was a white female. So looking at these names, so what happened was for the pilot study, the participants got those photographs that we saw on the last slide, and they got this list of names. So what I did was I picked out 2 names from each ethnic group. So, for example, I had Emma was one of the white females, and Michael was a white male. Ebony was a Black female. I had Fatima was the Muslim name. So Tyrone, a Black male. So what happened was they got the pictures and they got these names. So they had to match which name went with which picture. And so this is the African American pictures. And they had to match. So what happened was they picked significantly African American names, the 2 names that I picked. So what I did was I picked the name that they picked the most, and that represented the Black female, and that the Black male name that they picked the most represented the male. But across the board for Caucasian, they picked, I believe it was Emily and Michael every single time. So that's their name. That's Emily and that's Michael. Fatima and Muhammad. I think it was Isabella, and I want to say Jesus for the male. So the results of this pilot study showed that the names were matched stereotypically with the photo. And I did a chi-square, which is a statistical way of measuring. And these are the statistics behind it. So the pilot study showed that the female names were associated with the ethnic groups, um, and the male names also, it was very significant every single time. So I didn't even have to debate whether or not that was their name. The participants named them. So we can see Michael was the male. Um, Isabella was the Hispanic female, the African American female. So these are the names that I ended up with from the pilot study. So these were the names that I went with. So I got narrowed down from the pilot study. So I had these names to go with. I originally got the names, the original list that I had from the pilot study, I got from the Social Security database for that year, that names were given to children in the United States. So I figured out which names were actually African American names, or more of a white name, or came from a Hispanic background, that were in the top groups of those on the Social Security. So that's how I came up with the list. And then we narrowed it down with the pilot study and got this list of names to use for the actual study. And then this was what they look like. This was their pictures, again, just showing. But for the actual study, I did not use these pictures. So I got rid of the pictures for the actual study and replaced it with just the name that everybody picked from the pilot study. And the name went on top. I created this survey. So they had Emma was the white female, her name, the name of whatever person it was, that they got it at random. So the participants would get one of these and they would just fill it out. And based on the name that they had, they were asked to complete these questions. So Emma's selling a pair of jeans on eBay. How much would you pay for these pair of jeans? So this goes back to the study that I saw when I was doing my research, to see if people would actually pay more money for a pair of jeans that Emma was selling over a Black name, and so on. So indicated, indicate your agreement with the following statements. And there's a scale. So disagreeing is 1 and agreeing is a lot. It's a 6. So is Emma trustworthy? Does Emma have a high school diploma? Is she smart? Did she graduate from college? Would she try to swindle you? Emma didn't finish high school. Emma has never been in trouble with the law. Is Emma attractive? Is Emma probably unattractive? So is he attractive or is she not? Emma probably has no trouble getting a date. So they got these questions, and here you see them again. So they each got these questions. So what happened was the participants matched all the names significantly to the stereotypical name. So Emma got matched significantly with higher levels of certain things because she is a white female. And you will see that with the results. I did a repeated measures analysis of variance. So, trust. So, here's what we're looking at. So as far as trust goes, the most trustworthy, based on just the name.
The most trustworthy name was actually Isabella, which was a Spanish name. However, it came really close to Emma statistically, and Isabella could also be associated with being Caucasian.
untrustworthy person would be the Black male. And the Arabic female is like not far behind him. Yeah. So an Arabic male was pretty low too, and a Spanish male. And my reasoning why I think that that's what happened, I have some little thoughts that came to my mind. Possibility of Muslims being associated with being terrorists in this country. We may not trust them as much. So, you know, Muslim woman, if you hear the name Fatima, you think Muslim name, you think Muslim woman with a hijab, the head covering, you automatically go to terrorist. That is the stereotype that's happening with that. So when we look at the Black male, who's always getting into trouble on our news stations? Who's always the person who the police are getting called to? It's a lot of the times the Black men. So that is getting associated with them in more incarceration. If we look at statistics on incarceration, Black men and Puerto Rican men are the most incarcerated in this country, point blank. There's no debating it. So we're not going to trust people who are incarcerated, right? Whether or not a Black man, maybe, we never know. Like, this is a stereotype. We might actually be able to trust the Black male over Emma, but our stereotypes unconsciously, we're telling ourselves that we should trust Emma more. And this was significant with all of the things that I looked at. So education as well. We're seeing that the white female, Emma, again, is the most educated female. The white male, Michael, is the most educated male. Who is the least educated here? I think it's the Spanish male was associated with being less educated. And I wonder if the reasoning behind that could be because maybe there's language barriers going on. Doesn't mean that he's less educated, like not that he's more intelligent, but maybe that's stopping him from having a higher education. That's a possibility. So we're seeing that. And again, the Black male is associated with not having a high education. Black female, the females are all pretty even, except for Emma, who stands out from the crowd. So the females, and then we see that the minority males are all, they're significantly lower from Michael. So, and here are the statistics behind some of that. And then we're seeing that beauty as well. We're seeing that the Spanish female is the most beautiful, and the Black female is not so beautiful, and the Arabic is right there in the middle, I guess. And then the best looking male is the Caucasian male. And Emma is not too far behind. So Emma's doing pretty good here. And then we see all the statistics with gender. I discussed throughout some of my thoughts of why there could be statistical differences with these names. So I think for the limitations, I had a decent amount of participants, but you could always use more. And I didn't have a lot of access to minorities for the study. So Most of the participants were white participants. I did this at CCSU. The campus is not that diverse. At least when I did it, it wasn't that diverse. I think it's gotten a little bit better now, but so I had more white participants than minority participants. So it would be interesting to look at it from seeing that, with more knowing who the participants were, what race they were. Um, the names, I can't for sure say, like, the study's never been done before with these names. This is the first time it was done with these names to, to measure it this way. So, I mean, there's a possibility that that wasn't accurate, I guess. Survey, I created the survey. I did create it based off of research that was done in the past, but it wasn't done before with the survey. The photos I got from Photoshop, from clip art or whatever, and just use photos that look like they were those nationality, the ethnic groups. And of course, there could always be a lack of power. So for future research, like I was saying before, that I think, knowing who what the participants' race was, what their ethnic group is, knowing more about the participants to see if that makes a difference in how they answer these questions. Doing this with children would be really interesting. I have actually shown these slides to children, and they actually enjoy looking at this research study. So um, I I would love to see how children would answer these questions, and see a study like this done on children. Looking at gender to see if gender makes a difference with how these questions are actually answered, and of course doing more cross-cultural study. So that is my study on names and stereotypes. Um, the reason why this research, and there are a lot of other studies like this out there, the reason why this is so important and something to talk about and look at is because, as you see, significantly, names were associated with negative stereotypes. So when someone is filling out a job application, when someone sends in a resume, automatically they're already, they haven't even walked into the room, they haven't done anything. Their name is getting associated with whatever that name represents to people. So you may or may not get a job based on your name. You may or may not get called in for an interview based on your name. So I don't know if people all the time know that they're even doing that. Um, but now, if you're watching this, you know. So now you can't use that excuse anymore. Sorry. Now you know. You see a name, you may be already making stereotypes about that person. So you need to take a deep breath. You don't know who that person is. You don't know for sure if you can really trust that person based on that name, right? We don't know. I mean, Emma may actually be the serial killer, and Daewon may be the nicest, cuddly person in the world. But, you know, for whatever reason, we associate that name with being something negative. So we have to be careful about that, right? So that's why I think it's important that we educate ourselves. We know that this is something that happens. We know this is the reason why a lot of people may not get called in for interviews, may not be able to get employment. So knowing this is important, because now that we know, and we can do something about it. So that is my presentation on names and stereotypes. These are all of the lovely references that I looked at, and I hope that you guys stay safe. I hope you're well. Stay safe, stay well, and may peace and love be upon you at all times. I hope you learned something from this presentation, this research that I did, and I will hopefully show you some of the other research that I've done. They are always on culture because that's what I do. And I hope that you're safe and I hope you're well. And I will hope to see you again soon. Okay. Thank you. Bye.
There's so many things to say before I turn and walk away. If you don't see me again, if you don't see me again, nah, 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 nah. I say just